Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Onyx. On today's episode, I am joined by Guy and Ike Eastman. These accomplished brothers come from a deep hunting heritage and tell the story of how the third generation Eastman's Publishing Incorporated came to be. We also discuss the transition from just finding success to trophy hunting and why trophy hunting is a good thing from a conservation standpoint. Western hunting from past to present, and how to find success in the West today. The podcast is brought to you by Onyx. The Onyx Hunt app is your premier GPS hunting app that turns your phone into a working GPS. By using the offline feature, you can use your downloaded maps in the field without service in airplane mode to conserve battery and always know where you are. If you want to check out the Onyx Hunt app for yourself, head over to onyxmaps.com and use the coupon code EMW to save 20%. Tethered is a company that is founded on the principles of educating the hunting community on saddle hunting while creating the most innovative, lightweight, safe products for saddle hunting. They have mobile hunting gear options for all types of hunters and continue to push the envelope. To learn more about tethered and saddle hunting, head over to tetherednation.com. Maven is building the highest quality optics at half of the price of their competitors through their direct-to-consumer business model. They just want to create the best optics for the job, period. Their products are backed with a lifetime no-fault warranty and an incredible customer experience. I'm using the B2 9x45 binoculars in all my Western hunts. It is a low-light monster that allows you to see through the binos longer than you can with your naked eye. You can use the coupon code eastmeetswest-gift for a free gift with any full-price optics order at mavenbuilt.com. The Spartan Forge outfitter utilizes years of military background and machine learning to pull from millions of data points to accurately predict deer movement, including GPS data, 30 years of weather, academic and state research. They are using science rather than someone's opinion to figure out the movement for your specific hunting area so that you can make sure you're hunting on the best days. The outfitter is available online and will become an app soon. The price will probably increase at that point. So if you buy it now, you're locked into that lower rate for good. You can use the code EastMeetsWest to save 25% off of the outfitter at spartanforge.ai. On this week's Mountain Buck Story of the Week, or otherwise known as Mountain Buck Monday over on social media, I have a story from Matthew Schneider. And Matthew had said, I started getting pictures of this deer the third week of October in the Kentucky Big Woods. I knew the area well, so I started hunting with a bow on the fringes of doe bedding. Each week I would scout, then hunt that weekend on sign that I found. Then the modern rifle season came in along with the rut. I ended up totaling 11 days of hunting in rifle season alone. On the second to the last day of rifle season, I was able to connect with the old 30-30 on this 150-inch green score 10-point. And once again, some awesome bucks coming through and a really cool story from Matthew Schneider. I mean, going after it, 11 days of hunting and rifle season, plus all of the scouting, finding that hot sign, it all paid off for him. A lot of lessons to be learned from that story. So head over to East Meets West Hunt on Instagram and East Meets West Outdoors on Facebook to check out the photos of this deer that Matthew is chasing. So on today's episode, like I said, I am joined by Guy and Ike Eastman, and this is a really cool story. It's been a goal of mine to be able to talk to these guys, as they're legends in the hunting space and the outdoor media space as well. So to be able to talk to them was an honor, and I hope everyone gets some enjoyment out of this episode and has a great rest of your week. All right, we're live. Guy and Ike Eastman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be talking to the both of you. I mean, it's through the virtual world here as we seem to live in now. And Ike, you were just talking about you were at your first show in quite a while.
Yeah, I was just in Dallas, first time since SHOT Show last year, so 18 months almost. And it was really nice to be in a room with 2,900 other people and 3 people wearing a mask, and that's it. And no one died. And so it was really good to have human interaction again. And you could tell, the first day everybody's kind of nervous about touching and handshaking and doing the whole thing. And by day 2, probably after the cocktail party that night, everybody was back to normal and lots of energy. And you could tell it energizes you when you're face to face without a computer screen in between you.
Yeah. No, that's pretty nice. It felt weird this winter not going to any shows or anything. The last one I think I was at was in Harrisburg, the one we were talking about before we started recording back in 2020. Right. And then right after that's when everything kind of went to hell for a little bit. And and I got 4 events coming up here through the next 5 weeks, and it's nice to see people again. That's for sure.
It is actually shake hands and have a beer and laugh, and it's a refreshing.
Cool. Well, again, I'm glad to have you guys on the show here. I would love to just start out. You guys don't really need a whole lot of introduction, but if you would mind going through, we'll start with you, Ike, and kind of giving a little background on you specifically and yourself, and then we'll transition over to Guy.
Okay. Ike Eastman, and I'm the president and CEO of Eastman's Publishing. Also the janitor and the maintenance guy, and I don't know, I wear about 27 hats. Try not to be the idiot, but that sometimes comes across. Been with the company full time. I mean, obviously this company is a family owned. My parents started it, and so I've been with the company full time since 2003. Before that, I was a financial banker for a big bank out here, and was on a pretty good career path. And my parents called up and said, "Listen, we need somebody that has financial savvy and can work with the banks and do all the things, on the operating side. It's just getting too big for what they had." And so I came back and bought it. Guy and I bought it from our parents in 2008. And we've been running it ever since. It's changed a lot. There's things we were just talking about COVID. There's things that you have to do and change and pivot. And we were able to do that early and quickly. And it's been really good. The transition's been really good. We got a great team around us that is really knowledgeable, and they are unbelievably savvy and ethical. It's been fun and creative. So that's me in a nutshell.
Did you, when you were in the financial role, did you live in Wyoming still?
Yep. I told myself here, I'm the weird kid. I told myself when my wife and I graduated college, we were weighing our options, where we're going to go. I went to school in the University of Wyoming, and we decided, you know what? I love Wyoming, and we're going to do what it takes to live here. And that was living on rice and beans, working as a management trainee for this bank, making $20,000 a year, and obviously quickly grew from there. But I've never lived anywhere else besides Wyoming. It's in this day and age, I can't imagine it, and I really can't imagine it, in the current environment. I was just visiting. I was in Nashville for a little while, and then Texas, and even those states, as conservative as they are, I got off the plane this afternoon. I looked at my wife and said, "Welcome to free America again." I mean, it is nice to live in Wyoming and never have to wear a mask, and you don't have to worry about crazy people. And we walked downtown Dallas, Texas last night from dinner in the dark, and I think to myself, I forgot this isn't the smartest thing we could be doing right now. Yeah. You don't have to worry about that stuff here.
Yeah, no, that's pretty nice. I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere here in Pennsylvania as well, in a very small town, but the only thing is, we have a little bit of a different the government here is a little bit different than that you guys have it. And even I work in manufacturing full time, and we have to wear masks. And like today it was 85 degrees and all day. It's absolutely terrible. But I'm looking forward to we can our companies just even behind the CDC and the everything else are even worse. So it's been terrible. to be straight. So what about you, Guy? I'd like to hear a little bit of a background on you.
I'm actually the older brother. So I grew up hunting and fishing, of course, growing up in Wyoming. And I started helping film with my grandfather back in the 80s when I was a kid, and then went to college, engineering school back east. Came back out west, did engineering for a while, and then came back to the company, somewhat like Ike was explaining, and just hit the ground running with the business and helping grow the business. And then shortly after I got here, Ike came on. So that's in a nutshell my life story, all over the place. But, grew up hunting and fishing, and that's, where my heart's been my whole life. So
yeah,
what we should have done? We should have done each other's, because he's being too humble. He got the cool opportunity as a teenager to spend almost, I would say, every summer since you were 14. When you wasn't that guy pretty much with Grandpa?
Yeah.
I mean, he spent all summer traveling with my grandpa, learning how to film with him and listening to stories and sucking in secondhand smoke and just fishing and hunting and learning how to be a man with a true pioneer. So something that I know I wish I would have had that opportunity. Of course, by the time I was that age, Grandpa was he was 3 years from dying. So I think it's really cool that Guy got that opportunity and has been able to continue it and utilize it through his career. And it's always fun to listen to him tell stories that I've never even heard of. Grandpa Gordon in the 60s doing some crazy thing in British Columbia or Alaska or wherever.
Yeah. So what difference in age between the two of you is there? Just out of curiosity.
I think
almost 7 years.
Yeah, it's almost 7 years.
I mean, you look the same age, but
well, thank you. I'm almost 50.
Yeah, I just turned 44 on Saturday. So.
Well, it seems like you guys are hard charging just as much as you were when you were younger. Maybe you don't feel that way, but it seems like that from the outside, at least.
You don't see me get out of bed in the morning, grunting and groaning and my knees popping, and that's no lie. My wife told me just Saturday, I think she was being funny, but she goes, it's about time that I turn you in for 2 22-year-olds, because this is not, you're getting too old.
That's funny. So, Guy, what was that like, growing up on, with your grandfather and kind of learning from that experience? And that's one of the things I really want to talk about here is kind of just the evolution of Eastman name and brand and everything else.
At the time, I took it for granted completely. I didn't think anything of it. It was just a job to me, But hearing the stories and whatnot, and kind of one of those deals. It's you miss it and you realize it when it's gone. After he died, you hear all those stories like, oh yeah, some of them I heard so many times over and over that typical 16, 17-year-old, I'm glazed, checking out on him half the time, and then he died and it was all gone while I was in college. And then you wish you would have recorded some of them, wrote them down, saved them somehow, some way, somehow. But as a stupid 17-year-old, you thought you'd just remember them forever. So a lot of that was kind of lost, unfortunately, when he died. But, I really regret taking it so much for granted as I did.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. I mean, some of the stories and people he knew, and, a lot of those guys are dead, but they would come by to visit him, in the summer when I was there, and because they'd come to Yellowstone, pioneers in the hunting industry like Mr. Ruger and Roy Weatherby, and these guys that they all kind of grew up to, he was friends with Jack O'Connor, my grandfather was, and so they had he had a lot of connections, and I just thought, oh, these are just a bunch of old guys that like to go to hunting camp and whatever, and really I really did take a lot of that for granted.
Yeah. And like, you said at that age, you kind of, it's hard to take everything in when you're 16, 17, 18 years old. And I can understand how you would kind of take that for granted. And plus just growing up with it,
Yeah. It's kind of the norm, or was the norm for Ike and I, growing up, but we didn't realize how unique it was till later, I'm sure.
I remember, I think it was a few years ago, I remember watching something on your guys' YouTube channel. It was kind of like the story in some of the first film that your grandpa did. And was it the Northwest Territories, maybe?
Probably, yeah.
Was that some of the first hunting film to ever take place? I mean, those cameras looked interesting.
Yeah, he started in Alaska.
Okay.
Is where he started. He guided up there for a couple of years, and he got a smaller camera, of course, film camera, wind up 8mm, and he would just film his clients as he was hunting, and it just kind of grew from there, and that was really, really premature to what we know now. We're talking, I think he started filming that stuff in 1956, I think. So it was pretty remedial at that point, but there was none of it around. So, you have hunting footage. That's really unique. Wow. Let's watch that. And so people would come from all over. Of course, there was no TV, there was no internet, there was nothing.
Yeah.
You had to show it in a gymnasium on a projector. And so that's kind of what his shtick was, it developed into where he'd go film these adventures, build a film out of it, and then go to auditoriums and movie theaters and present this movie of this hunting adventure up north. Most of these animals people had never seen, Dall sheep and, caribou and brown bears and, all this stuff was really exotic to a 1956 audience. Now it's no big deal, but it was much different than back then.
Yeah, and there was no Adobe Premiere for editing or anything else, I'm sure.
No. And his editing was very remedial at first, and then because we grew up in Jackson Hole, and the Disney family had a place there, and so he kind of got connected with them, and then he ended up working for Disney for a few years in Hollywood. So he went out there, and that's where he really learned how to make films. Before that, it was just him filming some clients and slapping together, literally with Scotch tape. You literally cut the film and tape it together, very, very remedial. But once he went for, 4 or 5 years out to Hollywood and worked for Disney, then he knew how to do all the editing, all the sound mixing. I mean, it just really refined what he was able to do and just took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah. And then did your dad kind of grow up going along on some of those adventures and everything?
Yeah, he did on some of them. He's older. My dad's the oldest of the 3 boys, and his brother spent a lot of time on those adventures. But my dad was in Vietnam in the war there when a lot of that happened, by the time that really got rolling in the late 60s.
Okay. Interesting.
But he grew up doing it as well. My dad did, just a different portion. But most of the stuff that people see now of Gordon's films was done when my father was was already an adult.
Okay.
And left.
Late 60s, early 70s.
Do you still have some of that old film?
In fact, we've put a plan together to reenact it, or not reenact it, to resurrect it, let's say. And of course, it's old film, and so it's getting deteriorated every year. And there's family dynamics because there's two brothers and a sister that are involved with my dad, and so there's all that. But it's hopefully we have the ability, if nothing else, hopefully we have the ability to put it in an archive and keep it for a long time. I will tell you a cool thing that we did that Guy and I were able to do is we went to Northwest Territories. So my grandpa went to the Northwest Territories in 1962, Guy? Is that what it says on the?
I think so. 63, I think.
63. So we were able to go up to that same place, and it was just a happenstance, actually. The area had been owned by the same family for a very long time, and they'd sold it, and the gal that's running it, it's called Canal Outfitters now. She just happened to have an open slot for caribou and an open slot for sheep. And so we were able to go up there and kind of retrace his steps. In fact, and didn't do this on purpose, but it worked out. Guy shot his sheep on the same exact mountain from the same camp, almost 50 years, exactly 50 years opposite. And it was an unbelievable experience. And to be able to, you go into the little museum there in Norman Wells, the little tiny shack of a building. It's got some photos and some archive stuff from the natives and all that stuff. And you go in there and there's photos of Grandpa Gordon and sheep and him with caribou and all this stuff. And they didn't even know who he was. In fact, the curator come over and said, "Oh," because we had a camera and stuff. She goes, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And we started talking. She goes, "We had no idea who that was. We just knew they were old photos."
Really?
So it was kind of fun. Yeah, we were able to give them a tab at the bottom of, Gordon Eastman 1963 kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty crazy. So how did that kind of transition into you guys getting into filming and everything and the beginning of Eastman's? I know that was before you guys, but like how did that kind of come to be?
Well, I'll give you the elevator spiel. So Grandpa was doing all that stuff and filming stuff, and then he got into theatricals and Walt Disney in the 60s and 70s. And they were actually, he was building films that were in theaters. And then things kind of went a downturn, and he changed he was a really creative guy. And so he had a tendency to be a little bit ADD, and he changed what he was doing, and that kind of stuff kind of just got set aside until the early 80s when the VHS world started. And for those that don't know in your audience, there used to be this thing called a VHS tape. And you actually had to put it into a tape and it hooked to your TV, and you would watch a movie, and there would be stickers on the tape that says "Be kind and rewind," because it took you 15 or 20 minutes to rewind them every day or every time you want to watch them. And we would go to these stores, and these stores would have hundreds of titles of movies, and you go in and pick a movie and you take it home, and the family movie night, you didn't have to go to the theater. We could take this into our own home and eat our own popcorn, and by gosh, we could even drink beer if we wanted to. And so this happened in the early 80s, and my uncle and my grandfather they were doing something, probably filming deer or something on the winter range, and my uncle's like, "We should take all those old films, put them into VHSs, and sell them to all these rental stores, because a movie used to cost $150, $200 for a video store buy a $200 video and then rent it out for $5 and try and recoup their cost." And so they're like, "Yeah, sure, let's try that." And so they started doing it. And my dad, who came back from Vietnam, and he was an outfitter for a number of years, and then started a construction business because Jackson was all of a sudden it became the place to live, and the movie stars were moving in there. And so he started a construction business and was building houses. Guy and I were young, and the housing market popped And in Jackson, of course, it's a vacation place, so it's the first one to feel the housing market bubble pop. And so he went, my dad went broke. And so he transitioned into helping my grandfather and my uncle and sell those videos all over the country. In fact, I bet I would be willing to bet if my dad was sitting right here, he'd ask you what town you're from, and I'll bet you money he's been there, because he's been to every video store in Pennsylvania.
Really?
Every one of them. Yes. He's like it's sad. He'll do things like, do they still have that cafe on the other side of the tracks of that place? That was a really good place to eat. No, that hasn't been there since 1991. Yeah. But he traveled all over the place, all over the country selling these. And he was sitting actually at the Harrisburg show, which you and I were talking about a few minutes ago. And he was sitting at that show peddling these videos. And these guys would come up to the booth and go, "You have Western stuff like elk and deer?" "Yeah, we have some elk and a video on deer. And a new one just came out on Rocky Mountain mule deer. Well, man, I really want to hunt out there." And he got this idea. He was going to build a pamphlet, literally just a pamphlet, 3-fold pamphlet with some information on how to come out west hunting. And he would hand them out. "If you buy a video, I'll give you my how to hunt out west pamphlet free," kind of thing. And it just grew from there. And it grew from a pamphlet to a journal it was on newspaper print, had a nice cover on it, but newspaper print. And it went all the way and this is 1987 when we started doing that. And then it just grew faster and faster. Of course, the movie theaters, the video stores kind of started trailing off. I heard this weekend, though, there's still one Blockbuster. Did you guys know that?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's in Oregon.
Article. Yeah.
I just met the guy that owns it. And there's people that fly. He goes, weekly, I'll have 10 or 15 people that fly from somewhere else in the world just to come rent a video. Just rent a DVD, walk out the door, and walk back in and return it, because they don't have a DVD player even to play it on. They just want to have a Blockbuster number. And he'll get cards, like gift cards. Somebody found a box of gift cards and he puts them up on the wall. Anyway, so my dad started this journal, and it just started growing, and it grew from 1987 till 1997, from zero to a really good magazine that had a good following. And then Guy came in, and he and Dad started the Beau magazine. And then we started the TV show in 1999. Then that's when I was going to college. And so in 99, I was driving home 6 hours one way every weekend to film all the intros, because the magazine was based out of Montana actually then. And I would film the intros in my parents' house for all the TV shows and the DVDs and all that stuff. And then my wife and I drive back, go to school, and come back. And then... So it was becoming a powerhouse. When it went on TV and the Outdoor Channel became a thing, it was starting to be a big brand. And that's when they bring it back to Wyoming, and they had Guy working for them, and it I wouldn't say exploded, but it got to be a synergy that needed a lot more talent. And so that's when they bring myself in. And actually, Guy and I have a sister that's in between us, and she did the marketing for it for a number of years until she decided to be a stay-at-home mom. So there, I guess that's the elevator story of where we're at. And then of course we bought it from him in 2008 and started the whole digital side of our world, which is TagHub, which you're familiar with.
Yep.
At TagHub, and we took Guy and the video crew started an online series called Beyond the Grid. It's on YouTube and Waypoint and Amazon Prime and everywhere else that they'll let us put it. Facebook, yeah. Everywhere else they'll let us put the content. So it's grown significantly, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But I heard this saying this weekend. Somebody actually told me this about their business. Goes, "Oh yeah, we were over a 30-year overnight success."
Yeah.
Yeah, meaning we worked our butts off for 30 years, and people think you just fell into it.
Yeah, exactly. I heard, who was it? I think Robbie Denning had said that on, I'm doing this thing called the Founder Speaker Series, where a bunch of outdoor industry owners and stuff are talking to younger entrepreneurs like myself and everything, kind of giving some advice. And he had said that he's like, just it's taken a long time to work through kind of that stuff, and it's cool to see, like, as you were talking there, I'm thinking about how you've adapted through all the different, because how much technology has come along and how people consume content is so differently than it was even 10 years ago, and it's definitely it's got to be difficult.
12 months ago.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's to be able to adapt to that and kind of just continue to do that. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it comes with a lot of challenges. I'm not going to lie. We have tried and failed probably a half a dozen digital magazines, and it just, until we figured out how people want to consume content, but it's trial and error. And when you're out here, I would say living underneath the mushroom out here in Wyoming, you just try a lot of stuff and beat your head against the wall. It's a good thing we got strong hands, I guess.
Oh, that's funny. So to transition a little bit to your guys' hunting background. So like when I watch, whether it's Beyond the Grid or the television show or anything else like that, it seems like you guys are definitely going after and killing some of the bigger trophy animals that are out there. But was that kind of where you had started, just from learning that, or did you start kind of, just, how do I want to put it, getting some deer and elk and everything else under your belt and working towards it, and kind of talk about that, kind of the backgrounds as you were, becoming what you are today as far as hunters go. Guy, do you want to start off with this?
Sure. Of course, I didn't start out that way. I don't know, a lot of people do, but I started out, I'm sure, just like everybody else. My first bull elk was a spike by 2. I told my buddies this when I was in high school, I said, I'm not going to shoot a spike. I'm going to shoot a branch antler bull. And I got excited and shot at a spike. But when I got up to it, it had 2 points on one side. So I said, Steve, because my buddy shot an actual spike out of the herd. So, but that was with a bow. So my first elk was with a bow, but it was a spike by 2. So I started there and just, hey, that's cool. Now I want to shoot a 6-point bull. Oh, I got a little 6-pointer. I ended up being a 5-point. Then I want to get a real 6-point bull, little 6-point bull. And then it just, grows from there. I mean, it's probably a lot like golf or any sport. You just start out somewhere, and each time you're just trying to beat, get a little better. And then pretty soon you turn around and you feel like a snob because you're turning, passing up 320 bulls because you want a 350 or whatever the case is. It's the natural progression of a hunter. We talk about it a lot in this office. I mean, we have people in this office who start out just hunting for meat, and that's cool. Kill 5 cows 5 cows in 5 years. Then pretty soon, I'm going to try for a bull. Next thing you know, they're trying for a 350 bull. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a sport of constant, because it can be so frustrating, so difficult, so draining. I think it just lends itself to constant improvement, and you're always trying to best yourself. And it may seem like a lot of people, like, they're trying to best each other, and that happens, with hunting buddies a little bit too, but it's kind of a sport like running where you're trying to get your personal best. And it's more that type of an endeavor for me anyway. And so it just kind of progressed, and pretty soon, you're just kind of hunting for big stuff and just having a good time doing it. But there is a other side of that coin too. You're not afraid to eat a tag. If you climb that ladder, right? When you're starting out, you're like, man, I didn't get an elk this year. I'm a total failure. When you get up that ladder high enough, you're like, well, I didn't see the bull I wanted this year. No big deal. I'll shoot a cow for meat or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off there. And I think it's a natural progression. And then you get older like me, 50, or you get your grandkids or your kids involved, and you kind of go back down that ladder and you start it all over again. you know?
Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of guys that say when their kids started hunting, it changed it forever. All of a sudden, they reset that clock. They're not looking for the 350 anymore. They're back to, let's get a spike.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, it's a spike by 2. Well, that's awesome, son. You're starting where I started, you know, and then they ride that wave up again. And then they get the next wave where my dad is, where they just kind of want to be in camp and hang out. They like the camaraderie, but they don't like the work.
Yeah.
Right? They can walk up to a dead elk and go, I'll take a back strap, but boy, you guys got a mess to clean up here.
Yeah.
You know, they like to be around it and have fun, but they don't want to get their hands in there and put a pack on their back anymore. And, you know, that's kind of where the sunset tour is. So I think it's a full spectrum. You know, you ride that whole curve.
Yeah.
Everybody's at a different spot on that hill, but you know, I think that's kind of talking to as many hunters as I do, and generational hunters. It shows where the grandpa, the dad, the grandson, you know, that seems to be the natural progression of what we do. So
yeah,
we've been doing this for 35 years. And so we've watched the people that are my dad's age when they were their 30s and 40s, when we were kids. And, you know, you walk up to a show in Sacramento or Harrisburg every year. You know, we were in Sacramento for 32 years, and you watch generations grow up through the hunting. And that's where, you know, there's a negative, and right now there's a negative connotation on trophy hunting, because there's a lot of regular people that think that there's guys that just go out there, shoot the biggest animal they can, cut the head off, and leave. They don't realize that number one, that's illegal. That's worse than shooting an animal without a license. Number two, they don't understand that this is a progression, that the guy that's out there trying to better him or best himself, not necessarily best everybody else in the world, but best his personal best, you know, his personal best mile run, it's come from him starting a spike by 2, and then he'll get his kids involved, and then we'll go back to spike by 2. So we've watched it generationally, and it's been really interesting. And there's like I said, there's a negative connotation with trophy hunting, and there shouldn't be. It's just it's a way of keeping time on your run. That's all it is.
Yeah. No, and it's funny what you had said about like the way you described that, you know, your family and everything there. It reminds me exactly how my family is. You know, right now we go to our hunting camp, and my grandpa, who was extremely successful over the years, he doesn't care to leave camp a whole lot. He'll take a walk with his rifle up the valley there, and he gets something. He'll call me to come get it. You know, he'll call me to come get it and skin it and do all of that, and then even cutting it up. And then, and you know, but when I was a kid, even, you know, he was out there all the time in archery season, you know, in tree stand throughout the entire season doing it. And, you know, he kind of went, now he's just happy to be there with everybody at camp and the same thing. And, you know, and myself, I remember when my dad took me out, my first hunt, I was in a tree stand with him, and a spike whitetail came out on this power line, and I pulled out my scope and I said, Dad, it's just a spike. I'm not going to shoot it. He's like, no, you're shooting it. Like you can't be picky. You've never killed anything. Like you need to shoot.
You got to start somewhere, young man.
Yeah. And, you know, and then that kind of, you know, progressed up to the point, you know, now where I'm, you know, I have my own goals and where I'm trying to kill with whitetails, but I feel like I'm almost starting over when I started Western hunting 6 years ago. You know, my goal was just to kill what my branched antlered bull was what I wanted. Something that looked like an elk is kind of what I had in my mind. And then, I did that. Now I'm on to mule deer. This is my first year mule deer hunting, and I'm like, I just want something that looks like a mule deer. Even, you know, it might be smaller than some of the whitetails that I'm shooting, but that doesn't matter to me because this is, you know, getting into it and, you know, learning that side of things. And it is kind of funny how that progression works. And I could see the way the media kind of portrayed trophy hunting to make it seem, you know, well, it was just a lot of false information. Like you said, like people were going out there cutting the heads off and everything. But I totally agree. It's just the evolution of a hunter and wanting to challenge themselves more. And And I mean, there's also the side of it with taking older age class animals and what that's like even for the herds and the population and the dynamic there. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about that.
I'll let Guy handle that. He does it very eloquently.
Well, as I've studied a lot of this, been in this business a long time and really, researching and talking to big game biologists and game and fish people all over the West, when they manage herds, especially elk and sheep, where antelope, where they're really micromanaging a herd, those managers, they have to manage from two ends of that spectrum. They will manage the bull hunts or the buck hunts to manage the health of the herd, and they'll manage the cow hunts for the size of the herd. You know what I mean? So if they want to reduce the size of that herd, they offer cow tags. You have to. You got to take down the number of factories that are producing widgets. If you want to keep the herd healthy, you got to take out some of the males. Any rancher will tell you that. He doesn't have one bull for one cow. He's got one bull for 35 cows or whatever, and it needs to be an older class bull. So he gets the older, healthy, mature bull is doing the breeding to the cows, which produces better offspring that can handle the weather better. They're born at the right time. It's just the health of the herd and the reproduction of the herd. So with that, us as trophy hunters we're tasked with handling that in that side of the equation, the health of the herd. And part of that is taking the older age class animals, because you want the younger bulls and bucks to come up and become mature. But you want to take some of those mature animals out, especially the overly mature. Those are the real targets, the bulls that aren't doing any breeding anymore, that are just consuming the habitat. And those are the ones, and might die this winter anyway. That's a waste on the resource. So, it needs to be managed from both sides. So you can't say, well, we don't need to kill the bulls, we don't need to kill the cows. Well, you need to manage all of it to have the healthiest herd possible. With elk in particular, very important with elk, because they eat a lot. That's an 800-pound animal. It consumes a lot of resource. And so the game and fish, in some areas, they really struggle to even manage those herds because of private land issues, public land issues, migration corridors, all the things that we know as hunters, that the general public doesn't really think about probably.
Yeah.
Well, and elk are so adaptive. I mean, you can see them living at 10,000 feet almost all winter. And then, I was talking to some buddies that are shed hunting right now, and the bulls this year, because of the way that our winter happened, they were living at the tops of the peaks. They were snowed in, but they could live up there because of the wind swept. The wind swept the slopes off. And you see elk living in the desert. Guy and I went on we had a really good friend draw a desert tag here in Wyoming that we're literally in sand dunes. There's elk in sand dunes. So they're so adaptive. They're like cockroaches. I mean, they'll live anywhere, and they are huge cockroaches. So they consume a lot of resource, and so they got to be managed and managed well. One of the ways that they tried to do it is with wolves, and of course that's a whole nother level of a problem. Not necessarily on elk, but on other resources. But that's one of the ways they tried to handle the overpopulation in Yellowstone on elk herd was put wolves in there, and it worked. Maybe too good. Pushed all the elk to the desert, but.
And it's so you can talk about them being adaptive. So I live right on the edge of the Pennsylvania elk herd that's here, and the people that live around there can't stand them because they eat all the shrubs. They eat every single thing in the yard. We have some of the biggest bulls in the world that are here, and you'll have a 400-inch bull that's eating shrubs. You could be sitting on the porch and they're coming right up, and it's absolutely incredible to see. Yeah. But they to me, I live on the edge of it where they're not like in my backyard, so I think it's pretty cool to be able to, when I'm whitetail hunting, to hear bugles and seeing them and doing all that kind of stuff. But to the people that live there, they're kind of like pests,
They are a really cool conservation story. Elk are actually, we hunt in southern Colorado, and my dad, because he can remember this, back in the 60s, well, actually it started, I think, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they transferred elk from that Yellowstone elk herd that lives on the Winter Range there in Jackson, Wyoming. They transferred those elk all over the place. Montana, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico. I mean, they're all over the place. And God, that's where they got them for Pennsylvania, Kentucky. You know, they're in
Michigan,
Wisconsin, Michigan. Yeah, they have elk everywhere. And it's a huge conservation story on how we can do it if we do it right. Of course, like I said, they're adaptive, so they'll live anywhere. But it's a great story on if we do it and do it right, it can work.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I had interviewed the head elk biologist from Pennsylvania on the podcast before, and listening to the whole background, the story, and how they brought him in, and how they're managing him now by hunting, and just the way that it's incredible to see, and even like how these biologists just how they know so much about them and are able to, you know, they know the most about those animals, you know, as far as how to manage that population, how to have them healthy. And it is pretty incredible to be able to see it. Like you said, it's a conservation success story for sure.
Yeah.
I think they're to the point now where they have more states that have elk than don't.
Really?
I think it's gotten to that level. Which is amazing, because you go to the 40s, back in the 30s and 40s, they were only in like 4 states.
Wow.
You know, Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, Montana. So it's grown that much just in 50 years.
That's incredible.
I mean, they have them in Texas now, Oklahoma, you know, of course, the
Tennessee,
Dakotas, Nebraska.
I think Missouri, maybe.
Yep. Missouri, yep.
Yeah, I really wish I could draw one of those tags though here. That would be really nice. I've been putting in, my dad's been putting in from the first year. I don't think it's been like 17 or 18 years. He's got that many points, and I don't know. I got 10 or 11 points, and it's difficult. Do you guys put in for Pennsylvania?
No. Not usually. Do not shoot a spike by 2 if you get that tag.
No, I don't plan on it.
Set the bar just a little higher.
Yeah. Even though I've only shot 1 bull elk so far, I'm going to try to set that bar a little bit higher for here.
You draw that Pennsylvania tag, you go home empty-handed if you have to. Yeah. Go buy a lottery ticket after you win it.
I know, right? Or if I had a lot more money, I could bid on it and, you know, get the governor's tag or whatever they call it. But that goes for over 6 figures, so that's not in my playbook anytime soon.
Jeez, that's a lot. That's a lot per inch.
Yeah, it truly is. But so I you know, kind of looking at, you know, as you've been hunting for 30, 35 years, as you guys have been saying, how have you seen it kind of change as far as like hunting on public land, and like how that's changed over the years? If like, I don't know, I've been in it since it seems like there's a ton of guys and girls out there hunting, but from talking to some other people, it seemed like, you know, even 20 years ago, it was a little bit less of that. But I want to hear kind of your guys' input on that. Ike, do you want to start?
Go ahead, Ike.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, hunting has changed a lot in 35 years, in the sense that our gear has changed a lot. You know, the accuracy of a rifle. I can't imagine if my grandfather was alive today and we took him out on the range and I took my rifle. I won't do a shameless plug there, but my rifle and shot 800 yards and pinged steel at 800 yards. He would look at me and he would ask, "You don't hunt at that length, right?" No, I don't kill anything at that length, but the rifle's accurate enough, maybe not velocity enough, but accurate enough you can hit something. I think he would be dumbfounded. And then that's just the rifle. And now you have boots that you can wear that are built specifically for hunting. You have clothing that allow you to stay out there longer in worse conditions. You have tents and sleeping bags and, backpacks that actually fit and don't kill you and they don't weigh 45 pounds. And all of this gear has allowed all of us, I think, to hunt more, to be more passionate about it, stay out there longer. The other thing that's changed a lot is the management of these species. Each state does it differently, but there's a lot of these states that are doing a really, really good job managing their herds. But because of this data that they have, it has changed the tags and the number of tags. And I'll let Guy talk to the tags because he knows all the statistics of it. But there was a few things that were mind-numbing this year on how many tags they had now versus 20 years ago, and how many hunters there were in really popular areas 20 years ago versus now. I was thinking about Region G, Guy. What was the statistic there? It was a lot then versus now.
Right here. 1991, I graduated high school in 1990. The year after I graduated high school, it was 3,500 tags in that area. Last fall, they had 400.
Wow. And
So-
what is a hunter number like as far as applicants or anything else like equivalent to that? Is it quite a bit more people now that would be applying, or maybe, I don't know if
Yeah,
it's draw
there's
then.
more people applying for less tags. Back in 1991, it was a draw back then, but it was pretty much 100%, and there was leftover tags. At 30, now that's just non-resident tags. That's not residents. 3,500 non-residents for one region, and down to 400. So that is a drastic reduction in hunters, but the hunter success was about the same back then versus now.
And the herd isn't that much different.
No.
But they're getting. But we did a thing called a migration. It's called Imperiled. It's a film on these mule deer that migrate, 200 miles one direction, and guys talking about that area. We spent a lot of time with the biologists on that project, and they've managed that herd really well. They came to the conclusion that hunting in that area isn't the problem. It's not the hunting that's causing the big swings in population growth and decline. It's all of the other factors. It's the winters. It's the urban sprawl. It's these huge migration corridors that are getting cut off because some developer moves in and builds a bunch of cottage VRBOs around a lake in Pinedale. It's those factors that are making the huge problems. Just one, that example I just gave, which actually happened or was going to happen, and then they bought the property and turned it over to the state, that would have killed 5,000 deer overnight. Just like that. Would have killed, more than 10%. It would have killed, 15% of the population in one winter.
That's incredible. Yeah.
So that's why I say they're getting better at managing. They're getting better at managing these herds to maintain those herd, the herd size, and they're getting better at managing us as humans, so we aren't encroaching on them as bad.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about elk, it's the opposite. In Wyoming, when I graduated high school in 1990, we had about 62,000 elk in this state. Now we have almost over 120,000, they think.
Wow.
So our elk population has doubled in this state in the last 30 years. But the problem is the elk aren't where they used to be exactly. I mean, they're still where they used to be, but they have found new country to live in, and a lot of that country is down lower, like Ike was talking about in the desert.
Yeah.
I call it non-traditional elk habitats, which come with a lot of conflicts. Montana is a perfect example of this. What Montana did is Montana used to have most of their elk population was in the big public land tracts of western Montana, right? The big forests, the national forests, all that timber country. That's where the elk were. Well, when they put the wolves in, those elk went down, way down, and the elk started living in non-traditional habitat, eastern Montana, northern Montana. Well, guess what? That country's mostly private. So now you have a state, Montana, where over 70% of their elk are on private property year round. So now they have a lot of conflict up there because the public wants to hunt the elk. The landowners don't want the public to hunt the elk. They want outfitters and their clients or friends or whatever to hunt the elk. So you have a public resource living on private property. And now we've got a big problem because the elk aren't where they should be anymore because of the predation, which is the public land tracts. So elk is kind of like money. They'll end up where they're treated friendly, right? And they're treated friendly by the landowners. The federal government doesn't do a real good job of managing their land. They have too much of it, whether it's a BLM or the Forest Service. They're doing the best they can with very limited resources, usually in a hostile political climate because they've got everybody telling them what they should and shouldn't do. The private landowner, he's growing hay. I mean, the same thing that's good for his cows are good for elk, right? And pretty soon, all of a sudden, he's got 500 elk living on this place year round, tearing up his fences and his habitat and his hay fields. So what does he do? He goes and gets an outfitter. The outfitter says, hey, we'll hunt those elk. I'll pay you $10,000 a year. Hey, that's great. That's money in my pocket. That's how that whole thing happens. And pretty soon you have a privatized elk herd with the public with nowhere to go. And that's kind of where Montana's kind of headed. And Wyoming's not as bad because our state's laid out different, but that's what will happen eventually when some of these things start to go awry and the management starts to slide sideways. And the Game and Fish Department, I feel bad for them because a lot of times they're stuck in the middle. Yeah. They got the landowner mad at them because the elk are tearing everything up. They have to go get an outfitter. Then they got the public in town, their buddies mad at them because they can't hunt there anymore because they got an outfitter. They try to make some money off the elk that were tearing up their fences and hay fields. So it becomes a vicious circle.
Yeah, no, that I had heard about Montana being terrible with some of that, and it's funny because it's with any of those species. I mean, even with whitetails out here, we notice it. Like where I hunt is just a lot of big unbroken timber type country, but if you get anywhere near private land where they have any farms or anything, you can bet those deer are going to be hanging out there. They got all the food they could ever want. They have the security of being on private land and not having people run around chasing them and everything. And I think they're a little bit smarter than some people give them credit. That's for sure.
They're just like water. They go to the least resistance. That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
So with some of these changes, have you noticed as far as your own personal hunting that it's changed, or you've had to kind of change your strategy as far as trying to be productive? I don't know. Has it kind of that evolved a little bit through the years too?
Yeah, I think the strategies. Here's what I would say. So we're talking about elk. Let's take elk. My dad wrote an elk book almost 20 years ago, and I was flipping through it the other day trying to find a section or a paragraph in there, and it occurred to me all this information still works because elk didn't change.
Yeah,
they didn't change what they do or where they hang. What they need to survive and how they react to certain things, and they didn't really change. But what has changed is where they're at, and what 20 years ago when there wasn't wolves in there, they weren't so worried about predators. Not everything out there was out to eat them. Now they become the main food source for not just us, but for wolves and bears and every other predator, mountain lions, which is a big one, down south. So they've changed a little bit that way, but I think what's really changed is the hunting. The hunters have changed, and maybe this is just me getting older and I've changed. And so, the older you get, the angrier you are. I don't know. But I've seen the changes in guys being able to, like I said, go way further back, stay longer. They kill an elk and they're willing to take that 4-mile hike 4 times to get that bull out. That stuff didn't really happen when we were kids. You knew somebody with horses, or you didn't go back there because you didn't want, that wasn't something that we were geared up to be able to do. You know, you'd ruin the meat by the time you got it out.
Yeah.
Because you were wearing blue jeans and a pair of Walmart boots and a backpack that was war surplus from Korean War or some dumb thing.
So do you think like, so even though, but since our gear has gotten better and people are starting to, you know, do more and go back further and do all that kind of stuff, but the success rates really haven't changed a whole lot. Is that correct?
No. Yeah. At least that's the statistics.
Yeah.
It doesn't show that they're killing any more. It's just guys are spending more time back there.
Do you think that they've just adapted to it, and that's why, yeah, they're just used to the predators now, and they're maybe a little bit more skittish, or however you want to put it?
Yeah, and we were talking to the game biologist over in Western Wyoming. We were talking about mule deer, and this guy has, and I kid you not, he pulled these out. These huge 3-ring binders of photos of deer, and I think it was, what year did he start, Guy? It was 27 years.
94.
Yeah, so he has a photo of every deer that comes out of that drainage, because there's only one road in and one road out. So he just sits at the end of the road and he takes a photo of the buck and gets some measurements and stuff off the deer. And you know, obviously ask the guys how the hunting was and stuff. And we were flipping through those books, and you can definitely see the ebbs and flows of the trophy quality, which he contributes 100% to the winter range quality. Whatever's happening on the winter range, as those bucks drop their antlers and start that new season, however they come out of the rut and go into the winter, and how that winter is, you know, how well, I guess, foraged they are, is trophy quality. And you can see slight ebbs and flows, but it's nothing crazy. I mean, there's a couple years you go, whoa, that was a great year. Like, I think it was 2018 maybe, or no, it was 2016. It was right before the bad winter. It was unbelievable, the trophies that came out of there. But it wasn't like, you know, well, here's a crazy story. Out of all those years, hundreds of deer, maybe thousands. I mean, thousands of deer. There was 2 bucks that weren't 4-point deer in all of those photos, and they were bucks shot by kids. You know, the dad's just, you know, the whole, you know, the fork by spike, and all those deer, because of their management and everything else, they're all good class mature deer. It's changed, but I don't think it's changed as much as we think it has. I think there's more people back there. I would say that, but I don't know. What do you think, Guy?
I think, and I've had biologists tell me this, that when they started going to limited quota areas or limited quota hunts, like they started all that in the 90s, roughly, real serious, most states. The biologists will tell you their complaint is people, when they did that, people's expectations changed. When you could no longer just go down, buy a tag at the store, go up, have a good old time, shoot a buck, maybe not shoot a buck, and all of a sudden it takes 10 points to draw that area. Those guys, if it takes 10 points, I want big bucks, and I want lots of them, and I better be able to kill one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so with that, there's biologists who'll tell you the worst thing that ever happened was them having to manage for trophy quality because of the expectations of the public. Wanted bigger bucks, bigger bulls. If this takes 15 years to draw, it better be a darn good hunt. And so the Game and Fish has had to departments have had to manage for that. But people's expectations have changed drastically in the last 30 years. I mean, I've gone back and looked at some of those old magazines, issues of ours from the 80s, and you can't believe, I mean, great bucks and bulls and whatnot, but the stuff that we publish now is so much larger than the stuff that was in those old issues. Now, they had some flukes. You go back in the 60s and 70s, the real giants. So the top end was way higher than it is now, but the average is lower. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, you're not killing the 260s, the 270 bucks very often anymore, but they're killing a lot of 190s, 180s, some 200s where, they didn't used to as much in the old days. So it's kind of, I think people's perceptions have changed on what the reality is on the size of some of these animals now. I mean, 400-inch bulls, that was really crazy stuff to even talk about 30 years ago. That was once in a blue moon. There was only 1 or 2 states that could produce such a thing. Yeah. Arizona, maybe Nevada, maybe New Mexico. That was it. And now you got, they kill 20, 30 of them a year. Heck, Montana will kill 20 of them in a year sometimes alone, So the quality has actually gone up overall. We're just not seeing with mule deer. We're not seeing the megas. We are with elk, though. I mean, elk populations have gone up, up, up. And I think part of the mule deer struggling is some of a result of the elk being everywhere,
If you have elk living on a winter range that the deer have been, expecting to use that winter range, and the elk are living there all year, consuming that habitat, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So to kind of go into the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about here, it was the development of TagHub, which is something that I've been kind of diving into quite a bit this year, and I've been playing with a whole bunch of the different resources that are out there, and I've found TagHub to be it's a very useful tool as far as there's so much, depending on what you're looking for, you can find it there by using the different filters and the whole. I've really enjoyed using, I guess, is what I'm trying to say there, and I kind of want to hear, your guys' history on like how you came to it and just a little bit about it, I guess.
Okay, do you want to start off with the magazine? I'll let you start with how the whole MRS kind of transitioned, and then talk about TagHub.
Well, when my dad started the MRS. We call it the MRS Members Research Section. He had this idea that when the states started, like we talked about, going to these limited draw areas, guys started getting preference points. They needed to know what area to apply for. Back then, we had to do it on paper and actually send it in with a cashier's check. You couldn't just get on the internet like it is now. So guys really needed a lot of knowledge because they didn't want to accidentally apply for the wrong tag, or once they got a lot of points, make a mistake or make sure they're in the best area they can or whatever. So he had this idea to put in the MRS section of the magazine that would kind of go state by state and list just the top dozen areas, the best 12 elk areas in Nevada. So guys in Pennsylvania or wherever could go, oh yeah, I want to hunt that country around Ely. That's area 111, and they'd apply for that. And so that's kind of how that started. And then it got expanded as more and more states did draw. When in 1996, I think, or 94, Colorado went from over the counter to a draw system for mule deer statewide. So like overnight, all these guys who come out from California or Pennsylvania, all these areas that they could just buy a tag and go hunting, they all of a sudden had to apply for it. And so it changed the game completely. And so then research became a huge component to Western hunting.
Yeah.
More than ever before, of course. And so that tool was developed to help, get that information out to guys. And as those processes grew state by state through the whole West, that section just grew. And pretty soon it just became a monster, to where it's got 500,000 data points in it, and it's just too much to print in the magazine because I got to put it on paper, print it, put it in a post office system, and send it to you. So it's very costly. So we can only put roughly 10% of the information in the MRS in the magazine. It's just not enough room for it. So we thought, what are we going to do with all this data? Because we're collecting it all anyway. So then Ike and the team came up with the idea, let's put it in a digital format where we can house it all and you could sort it all. Even if you're not looking for the 15, 20 point unit, you're looking for what's the best elk unit I can go hunt for 3 points.
Yep.
Or how many points does a general elk tag in Wyoming take? Oh, I go look it up in there and then it'll tell you. So that's kind of the background on it.
Gotcha.
And then we took all that data and put it in there, and you can get a subscription for that, so you get all that. And we thought, well, people are in there consuming this content. We started getting guys going, I want to watch the TV shows, and so we put the TV shows in there, and you can actually, if you're a TagHub member, you can watch our TV show before it airs on the Outdoor Channel. If you're a TagHub member, you get to watch the Beyond the Grids before we release them everywhere else. We put all of our book collection is in there, so you can read all the books for free. We got a bunch of really cool sponsors through the years with our TV show and everything else we're doing, and so they're giving discounts. I mean, you can get like $1,000 off of an e-bike. You can get 20, I think it's 15% off of Eberly Stocks, anything you order on eberlystock.com. I mean, there's tons of that type of stuff. Then there's, if you subscribe right now, actually, I'm going to do this shameless plug. If you subscribe right now, we worked a deal out with Yeti and Black Rifle Coffee. And so you get a cool Yeti mug and a bag of Black Rifle coffee to try. There's just it's kind of if you're really serious about Western hunting, and you're going to do all the data work anyway, and you're going to consume the content anyway, it's just one place to go and to do all that, so that it's easy for you. You can read the magazines there digitally. It's just one place, and there's some cool stuff coming up. I can't tell you, but we have some ideas and some things that are in the works for TagHub that'll be really, really cool here in the next, hopefully before we get into we call the MRS season, which usually starts in December. So,
gotcha. And so I didn't know that you had like those additional deals and stuff on TagHub. I've been using it. Well, it's been about a month since I've logged in, as I'm done with my personal applications and stuff. But I really like the digital magazine on there was one of the things, and then also I don't have it pulled up in front of me to be able to look at it, but where you can go through and filter it, and you're looking at the map, and it gives you the different color coding as far as, kind of going, you can put in what you're looking for, and it shows you the units that are available, and that'd help me pick the mule deer unit that I'm applying for in Colorado this year, which hopefully I'll be drawn here shortly. But it's a very, I don't know, I think it's a very easy tool to use, and at the same time, there's so much data in there. And if you geek out on data, you can have a lot of fun in there as well.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, and to be able to use, because all the historic data is in there too. So you're able to look at trends and what's going on in one specific unit, or the units that you can draw this year or next year. What's happening there, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
you can get lost there. I have.
Yeah,
look up and it's 2 hours. You're like, holy crap! Did I get my kids? I think I left them at dance.
I think it's was it 3-year average? Is that what it goes by, like for harvest success? Yeah. That was one of the things that I like looking at, because if you just look at like last year, it could be an anomaly, versus, but if you pull it in a 3-year thing, you kind of can see, what it's been like, and it gives you a pretty good idea versus just looking at it for 1 year or anything else. And I don't know.
The other thing it's given us the ability to do is update the information. One of the problems we had with the magazine is we'd print the information that we had at the time. And, the lag time between when we sent it to the printer and it arrived at a door could be a month. And, Nevada, who's notorious for giving us information late or changing they give us the information and then 2 weeks later come back and go, oh yeah, just kidding. We changed all the tag allocations. Well, that's going to change all the draw odds. Great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So if TagHub, we just go in there and flip a switch, add the data, and it's always current. And we send you notifications. Hey, Nevada changed this. Go check it out.
Yeah. So. Cool. Well, thanks for giving me that, or giving everybody, I guess, the information there, and being able to put that online. It's easy to be able to access and to be able to use. And I don't know, I'm one of those guys that kind of geeks out and likes looking at areas that I might not be able to hunt for 10 years, but just kind of just looking at trends and everything else. It's fun to be able to use, and the digital magazine as well. Just being able to go through and read that and read the stories and everything that comes along with it. It's got the information, it's got the entertainment, and just about everything there. So, well, I appreciate you guys coming on and taking some time out of here. I know, Ike, you're pretty tired after a long day of travel here. Guy, the younger one here seems to be full of energy and ready to go. But but no,
I know how to conserve.
But seriously, guys, thank you very much for coming on. Would you like to tell everyone where they can find information on the stuff that you're putting out? I know we kind of sprinkled it through the episode here, but feel free to throw some shameless plugs out.
Yeah, TagHub.eastmans.com. And then, of course, you can find us on all social media platforms. It's Eastman's Hunting Journals. YouTube, same thing. Instagram, Facebook. If you get on there, sign up for our e-news. We send out once a week. We send out a really cool e-news that usually has a hot topic, like what's going on with grizzly bears, or what's the political world with what we were talking about with Montana. What's going on with that up there and the landowners, and then we'll have an article in there and a gear review sometimes of some new gear that the newest, latest, and greatest Everly stock back, or the newest, latest, and greatest bow that isn't even in the shelves yet, and we'll do a review on that. Optics, you name it. And then, of course, that's also a great place to get informed of what's new content-wise. Is there a new Beyond the Grid coming out, or is there a new podcast for our podcast? So check it out. Eastmans.com is the best place to start that. And it'll pop up with sign up for our e-news. We don't send you a ton of junk. We try not to be those people.
Not a ton.
Not a ton. I mean, we do, but not a ton. Most of it has something interesting. Weight. What's that?
Half a ton in digital weight.
Right. I mean, that's right. So I guess I was talking to Scott as we were talking here, and he said that there's a discount for TagHub for your listeners if they use Beau BEU 20
BEAU.
Well, yeah, sorry, BEAU 20. They get a discount if they sign up for TagHub. So make sure they use that.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Cool.
Thanks.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.